Ahoj, moje jméno je Petr Holík a tohle je Nenásilný podcast s Petrem a Petrem. Dneska tady je jenom jeden Petr, protože tohle je speciální epizoda. Mám tady dva hosty. Jeden z nich je jezuitský kněz a trenér nenásilné komunikace ze Srí Lanky, Otec Chris. A druhý, který s ním vede dnešní rozhovor, Ondrášem Přibylou, náš kamarád, učitel a trenér nenásilné komunikace tady z Brna. Pokud jste poslouchali pozorně, tak tohle už je druhá část našeho rozhovoru. Já bych se přešel rovnou k ní a jenom upozorňuji, že zase bude v angličtině, takže pro ty z vás, co angličtina nefunguje, napište nám, jsme schopni udělat přepis nebo nějakým způsobem se postarat o to, aby tyhle ty rozhovory byly přístupné pro všechny. So, gentlemen, welcome for the second time. This is the second part of this interview, and I give a word to you, and you can talk about whatever you find interesting.
Yeah. So the point where we finished the first part was the fluency between the languages of nonviolent communication, the language of Christianity and the language of Buddhism. I heard you several times speaking about mystics. So I would like for this part directly dive into mystics. Once we were walking together and I asked you why all the saints are suffering, they are on crosses and so on. And your answer was, the Jesus on the cross and the Buddha sitting under the tree, they are the same. Could you explain?
Yes, Buddha, I think he explicitly said his Four Noble Truths, and he started saying life is suffering. And Jesus also, in the image of the crucifix, symbolizes the suffering and also an excruciating suffering on the cross. And there is parallel between these two, because Jesus also is talking about suffering and how to free yourself from suffering. And Buddha also says that you could free yourself, and he suggests the eightfold path. Eightfold path that he suggests for releasing you from relieving from your suffering. And if we see these two things, that you can see there is so much parallelism between Buddhism and Christianity, and there is so much of, in fact, for that matter, in most of the religions, there is lots of things that come together, and especially when it comes to compassion. Compassion it's through practically all the religions. It's sort of a main principle or line that goes through all the religions.
And basically this is what we try to cultivate in nonviolent communication.
Exactly. For me, nonviolent communication is precisely that, to cultivate our heart into compassion, to become a compassionate heart. That is, the cultivation of a heart is what NVC is all about. And therefore, in that sense, there is so much of resonance in all of this. And in the crucifix also, you see the vertical and the horizontal meeting at the point. And that is the connection that we talk about. What we say in NVC is all about connection and discovering the connections in our life, in our oneness in all of this. So it helps us to see and these things very clearly. And I think this becomes very clear if you read the lives of what they call the mystics in all the religions. There are mystics in all the religions, like Kabir in Buddha, and
Rumi. Would you call Rumi also
all these
a mystic?
people have seen that. So they have not this problem that crops up, the struggle between religions, fight against one another. That doesn't come to them, because they have gone beyond belief, in the sense, for me also, even Christianity, when we are called to Christianity, it is also to go beyond the human religion that we practice. And that is what the invitation is, not to stay at the gate and instead to enter and go beyond.
I want to catch you on one subtle thing I noticed. In NVC, we often say NVC is about connection. And when you spoke about it just a few minutes ago, you didn't say NVC is about creating a connection. You said NVC is about discovering a connection, realizing that we are one, or something like that. Do you see a difference?
Yes, especially it is very useful to realize this when we live or practice NVC, because when you are going to discover connection, it is different energy and different process, and when you are trying to connect, it's a different thing. So for me, NVC is not about trying to connect to people, but instead trying to discover the connection. So this also sort of relieves you of this duality of, you're not different from the other. You are one. And to live that is what NVC is.
When you are saying it like this, it kind of takes away all these struggles I have with my parents. Because my parents are most difficult for me to connect with. But it's probably because I'm trying to connect with them the way I am used to connecting, and I'm trying to create the same connection. But when you say discover connection, then it's like, yes, it's already there. My mother is my mother. We are connected. And I can touch the point much more easily than if I'm trying to create a different one. So I see it as a
and that also
thing.
helps us to understand NVC a little deeply, in the sense of I say, for instance, not to connect, but to discover the connection and to abide in the connection. That is to live in the connection. That is living NVC for me. So which has these things: first to have this understanding that we are connected, this search to be able to discover this connection more fully, and then to abide in that connection. That is to live in that connection.
Yeah.
So that makes NVC as something much more flowing in our lives, not as something that we are trying to find some new technique or new way of living or something. It is just allowing the flow of life to manifest itself fully through this process of NVC.
How does this apply into situations where I see somebody doing something harmful? So basically, if I want to intervene, I create a conflict. And for me, NVC is not about being nice, about avoiding conflicts. How can I step into intervening? Say, I'm walking on the street and there is somebody spraying graffiti on some special building, like a church or like old building. And I see it as being harmful. How can I step in while still being truth to some kind of compassion or connection, or all these nice terms we are talking about?
Yeah, that's where I go into what more important for me is the presence, to be able to be present. Present for myself and for the other. So when you see this thing happening, first of all, there's something arising in you, and to be present to that. And also to be able to be present to what the other person is doing and what the other person is feeling, of course, at least what he is about, at least to respect that, to be staying. So I remember once I was walking across the schoolyard and there was one teacher who was caning one of the kids. So I walked and I just stood by there and watched, just being present to the situation. And I did not say anything, And I don't know really what happened after that. But I believe that the teacher must have got something about this, even without me speaking a word.
Yeah. What seems to be now starting to surface is to be present doesn't mean to be present to the things I like, or just to be present to the things I like. Because if I say something to the person who is spraying something on the wall, he will not like it. And I'm trying usually to avoid speaking to people in the ways they don't like. But you say staying present, that means I can stay present even though he's not okay with what I say and I'm not okay with what he does. But staying present with these uncomfortable feelings.
Yes. That, I mean, in NVC we always say that without judgment, neither judging yourself nor judging the other, but to be present. And of course, when you're present, there is no question of motive. You don't want to correct the other. You don't want to bring them to the right thing to do or wrong thing to do. And so those dualities disappear. You know, when you don't have that duality of right and wrong.
Yeah.
So that is where it is. Actually, Rumi says we shall meet beyond in the field of, beyond the field of right and wrong.
Beyond the ideas about right doing and wrong doing, there is a field.
Yes.
We will meet there. Yeah, that's how I remember the quotation of Rumi. I can imagine, because I was in the situation where when somebody was praying something on the church wall, and I really didn't like it, but I was stuck, and I just, I don't know what to do, and then I passed. I can imagine seeing what he does not as right or wrong, but seeing it what he does. Still, I have impulse to correct him. What can I do then?
So, again, it's a question of if something, even if you say something, that you are at peace with what you say. That is what it means to be present.
Okay.
Present doesn't mean that you don't say anything and you just keep quiet. But even when you say something, there is not about trying to correct. There is no question of trying to correct him or guide him. Or it's not about doing anything. That is what presence is. So presence does not mean inactive moments. Presence could be there in all active moments.
So I can shout at him and say, "Hey, guy, what are you fucking doing? Stop!" And he will respond, but we can still be present to this intensity.
Yeah, for me, the presence is actually opening oneself to life. Because when you get stuck in your own saying or in what the other person is doing, you are abstract. That is what I call resistance. You see.
Resistant life. Resisting, and I notice it because I was trying to avoid either conflict or I was trying to avoid the feelings that I expected will be there if I try to say something, and I can notice this in several situations. Well, I would like to try to push it from different angles, because once we start to talk about presence. What we call presence is not the presence. We cannot name it. So I will try different things on it. You spoke about resistance to what is. And Robert Gonzalez writes, there are two primary forces in life. One is the life force. The second is that which resists the life force. I can connect it to everyday situation. Can I connect this to the notion of God?
Yes. Actually, if you go to the Gospels, there is a beautiful passage where Jesus says, look at the birds of the air and lilies of the field. They don't sow and they don't, yet they have a beautiful life. And Solomon in all his glory was never beautifully dressed like these beautiful flowers. So in that sense, what he's talking about living, it's not about living. Actually, there is no motive, there is no purpose, there is no anything about it. It's just allowing life to be there. That is what living is for. That's what the birds and they don't worry about what to eat and what they should do and all that stuff. And they allow life to manifest itself in all its glory. And that is what is also expected of us. We are pretty strong on purpose. You should have a purpose in life and purpose in this. But then all these things are more a manifestation of our ego than life itself. So the focus in the Gospels, and I think in Christianity, is also to allow life to manifest itself. And that is what NVC is also. NVC is even in a conflict. It's not a question of trying to resolve the conflict, but to be there, be present to it, so that the energy that is there, you see, in life there is an energy, whether there is a conflict or not, there is energy. And that energy finds its way of moving around. Just like, in the Chinese medicine, they just put pins around, prick, because they point channels where, so that just release the channels so that the energy can flow. And that is what the idea of health. And so this way of allowing life to flow is beautiful way. And actually, I have experienced this also sometimes when there is a conflict going on, when you are present, and then you see what we call empathy, for instance. Empathy is not trying to help someone, you see. It's not trying to say things that they might be comfortable with, but it is to really be present. I call it always passionately be present to the other. And then what it evokes is in the other person also, the same presence is evoked. Though they might be, when they are conflict, still when they see someone in this presence, it evokes them. And then when this presence comes to fullness, of course, conflicts finds its way of flowing, you see. So
conflicts finds its way of flowing. It's nice to hear it like that. It's not avoid conflicts, but be present to conflicts.
Yeah, because I think conflict is something that we can always speak about very, especially in NVC, we say a lot of it about conflicts. And unfortunately, how we hold conflicts is what sometimes makes the conflict worse, because we are afraid of conflict sometimes.
Yeah.
And conflict actually, it just what it says is there is life, right? So when in relationships, when we see conflict, we want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But when you really open yourself to be present to it, in some ways I call it embracing it, then the conflict finds its way of flowing. It's just like blocking the flow of energy.
Yeah, it maps very, very clearly to my experiences from say businesses. Like 3 days ago, I had a mediation, and basically I was invited to help them with the conflict, and what I needed to do was put more fire and encourage them to actually voice what they wanted to say in a rough way, because they were trying to avoid and trying to be very nice and correct, while clearly having some big issue to resolve. So it's like, not avoiding the conflict, but holding the conflict so that conflict can flow. You say it like this.
Yeah, because actually a conflict is, actually there's a block of energy, somewhere. So when you hold it peacefully, and of course it finds its own way of...
Yeah, the trick is in peacefully. Because if I try to hold peacefully conflict with my wife, basically we are both avoiding. So sometimes it requires some energy to sit together and get to these uncomfortable feelings and ideas. Okay. You spoke about lilies on the field and birds in the air in the gospel, which reminded me of saying of my Zen teacher. He said, if you have mind, then you and I are different. If you don't have mind, then you and I are the same. Which is basically, if we are judging and thinking and have the ego, then we are separating each other. But we are human. We do have mind. How can we come to the state of not having a mind, which is the Zen way of saying it? How could that be translated in, say, nonviolent communication?
Yeah, it's not a question of not having the mind. Instead, I would say allowing the mind to be there. You know, so it's not sometimes they think that meditation or these things mean just trying to avoid or stop thinking, but it does not mean that. It's simply allowing the mind and the thoughts to be there and to become aware of it. You know, not to judge it, not to direct it, not to be uncomfortable, or to be at ease with what is there. So that allowing is what I would say is most important. So in other words, also sometimes we think about letting go attachments, but it is also the same thing. You can say allowing the attachments to be there.
Okay.
It's not about removing them.
So would you say also that we can let go of attachment to our thinking, even though the thinking is there? We can let go of attachments to our attachment, even though the attachments are there. Just trying, like, open the hand.
Yes, actually the words sometimes confuse us, because when we say we can let go, it's already we are involving ourselves into it. It does. You don't have to do anything, in the sense of that is opening yourself, as you said, opening your hand. That's what you do, and in the sense of allowing everything to be there. That is the beautiful poem of Rumi that always reminds me of this. Is the guest house, where he talks about allowing all emotions, allowing them to come, and not to reject any of them, but just to welcome them, allow them to come and allow them to go. So this welcoming and this allowing is what it's all about. It could also be, we can say, letting go of these attachments, or allowing the attachments to be there. They are the same.
And this puts a nice twist on nonviolent communication, where we have the 4 steps, and the second is feelings. It's not. It could be not speaking about the feelings or naming the feelings, but actually allowing feelings to be there and just feeling them.
And feeling them, yes, that's true. That's true. It's because feelings is something that we don't really stay with, allow them to be there, because we like to stay with them till we like, and when we don't like, we want to.
Okay, so if there is a joy, I would like to stay with the joy, but if there is a sadness or anger, I don't want to stay with sadness or anger.
Exactly. So it's a question of the practice here is always to stay with whatever the feelings are, welcoming them, allowing them, and that is where I think really you can get to what the 3rd step of needs, which is an important step, and also basically that we say is more crucial, in the sense of that is the life energy that we are speaking about, the needs. So when we say need as life energy, you cannot reach it. It's like peeling an onion. You keep on peeling and peeling and peeling, and then you don't know what will come out of it. You see, that it's only the peeling is there. So when you stay with it doesn't take you to the need, but at least takes you closer and closer to the need.
But then one can see life energy very clearly. Like, this is what I see at the workshops. That sometimes when we go through a process or do empathy or do diets, where people ask each other, when did you experience this need to be fulfilled? It's not the word that does the thing, but at some moment the person starts to shine. There starts to be a light in the eyes, and something happens, and then I think that I'm seeing the life energy. But I see it in the body. It's not in the language, but the language seems to trigger it. It doesn't make sense to focus on the language, on the words, but still the words do something that manifests as life energy.
Yes, it's what they call in in the Hindu language, it's Kundalini, rises. That's the power, that is life energy that arises, and to be able to hold it is what it's all about. It's about allowing life to heal itself and find. So the medicine also now, they believe that there is all the energy that you need to heal yourself in so many different ways. So it's not a question of trying to put medicine and stop this and stop that, but it's a question of holding it to allow these things to find their way. So this also, for me, an experience. Once I had a accident. I was driving and I just fell asleep, and then went into the car was totaled, and I was unconscious, and someone took me to the hospital, and I was there in the hospital. There was no wounds, nothing happened, nothing broken, but there was pain, excruciating pain in my body. And so at that time I just was happy that nothing is broken. But with this pain, I tried to see, every time I tried to resist it, and which of course you don't like pain.
Yeah.
And it becomes worse every time I try to resist it. So then I realized that that is not the way to go. It is learning how to allow it to be there, because there is no other choice you have, really. So allowing the pain to be there, that itself sort of eased my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly I began to embrace it in the sense of hold it, and then slowly it disappeared. So this was practical experience for me in life.
Yeah,
so,
and again there is this kind of resisting, blocking, and allowing it to be there. But it's not easy.
It's not easy, but if you're aware of the process, then you can practice it. You can slowly get to that.
We almost went through all the steps of the nonviolent communication, or of the basic process: the observation, feeling, the needs. There is the request. How does this connect to what we said before?
Request, of course, we say that it should not be a demand.
Yeah.
I would say even it could be with not a request, in the sense of it's more of a connection. Because when you really connect, when you abide in your connection, then it is not my request or your request, it's common request.
Okay.
Because one perceives the need of the other in some ways, So
is it like basically trying to see the action that is required for the flow to flow again?
Continue, yeah.
To continue, yeah.
And it's easier when you have this abiding in the connection, in the sense of when you are in the connection, of course, the request also flows through it, in the sense of you can see more and more clearly what you really need, not what you really want to please yourself or do that, but it's to be what is the need.
I would like to try a few more mystics here. I have a collection of kongans, koans. In Korean, we say kongan, from Zen Master Seung San. And few of the kongans are Christian ones. One of them is, no matter how much you speak or preach about Jesus Christ, if he is not living in you, he is out of your reach. Who is this Jesus Christ that should be living in myself, or that is out of my reach if it's not living in myself?
Yeah, Jesus Christ is your life and life path, basically, because that's what Jesus himself said. I am the way, I am the life. So in that sense, once you are not present to this life that is living in you, is present in you, it's no point talking about it to others, about what he said or that's partly why that he has to find this place in you, and you need to live that path that is Jesus.
So it's not something other or someone other.
we say this also of God, you know, if there's a nice little story about God was so bothered about all these prayers, people asking and this and that. He said, where could I go and hide? If I go to the heavens, there also it's no space. But then someone suggested, why don't you hide in the heart of man? Because he never looks in there. You know?
Why don't you hide in the heart of man? Because he never looks in there.
So something like that. It's so that applies to Jesus also. When we nicely put in that koan, unless he lives in you, all your teachings, all your searching, it does not help you.
And the koan invites to see clearly what the word Jesus Christ means. That it's not the other. Okay, how is Jesus Christ living in you right now?
He lives in me as life energy, life presence. And he lives me as guiding me, and also in my speech, that what I speak is not my words, basically. You know, in that sense, you begin to realize it. What you say is what comes out at the moment. That's partly why I don't like to prepare any speeches or any programs, because at the moment, as you are open to it, as I think it's in the Gospels also, don't worry about what to say and what not to say. Everything will be given to you, and which is true. Is it?
I like what I'm seeing, which is when I ask you this question, you started to look at me, and we keep the eye contact, and your gestures were more alive somehow. So you spoke some words, but my question, how is Jesus Christ living in you? Through the eye contact, something transferred. And I know this doesn't go through the microphone and it was here. There is a commentary to the koan that the cross is making you free. If you attain a cross, you are sitting together with God. Which is funny that a Buddhist Zen master wrote this, or probably he took it from somewhere, but he put it into his koan collection. So how is cross making you free? How is attaining the cross makes me sitting with the God? Again, it seems that the words have some meaning which is beyond the words. Would you comment on it?
Yeah, in the sense of course, Jesus also says, you know, if you want to come after me, take up your cross and follow me, you know. So in that sense, he was also finding a way out of your suffering is really through this way of the cross, you know. The cross is really is connecting to the divine, you know, in connecting to yourself, connecting to the other, you connect to the divine, you know. So that is what the cross for me is. It's always about being present to the suffering, you know. It's sort of not trying to avoid it.
Not trying to resist. We are coming to the same point again.
Yeah.
And you said it before when you spoke about the Four Noble Truths.
Yes.
And now I see it again clearly that I don't know whether it's second or fourth or third Noble Truth basically say we are trying to go away of the suffering, and this is exactly where the suffering becomes bigger, and the way to end the suffering is actually to go towards it.
That's the resistance and the embrace of what we're talking here.
Okay,
thank you, Ondráš. Thank you, because your questions help me to make things clear for myself also.
Oh, really?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so here is a place to finish the second part.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for this conversation. I'm very happy that I could be present to it. Takže přátelé, teďka bych se ještě rád rozloučil s váma. Tohle byla druhá část našeho rozhovoru s otcem Chrisem. Určitě to není ani jedna z posledních epizod a není to ani jeden z posledních hostů, takže se těšte na další epizody a já se na vás budu těšit zase u dalšího podcastu jménem Nenásilný podcast s Petrem a Petrem. Mějte se, ahoj.